walking down the street, listening to music, moving his arms to the music as he's walking home, totally minding his own business.
911, what is the address of the emergency?
And apparently somebody called 911 saying that there was somebody who was acting strange. But the 911 caller said he might be a good guy, he might be a bad guy, I just don't know. But he said Elijah had no weapon, he was not suspected of having committed any crime, and nobody was in danger. So based on that information, there was no legal right for the police to stop Elijah at all, much less do what they did.
Stop right there. Hey, stop right there. Stop. Stop.
Which was to grab him,
Stop. I have a right to stop you because you're being
immediately tackle him, and then over the course of 18 minutes, 15 minutes of which he was handcuffed, exert all kinds of excessive force on him. That included 2 carotid chokeholds, that's a chokehold that has now been outlawed in Colorado, and multiple other kinds of pain compliance techniques. So simply sadistic things because he was already handcuffed, he's laying on the ground. At some point he was vomiting from the pain that had been inflicted on him. And officers, instead of showing some modicum of humanity, stood there over him, joking, "Don't get that on me." And one officer, who apparently thought Elijah wasn't lying still enough as he was dying, threatened to stick a dog on him to bite him. I mean, the lack of humanity is absolutely stunning. The depravity of this police department that has such a long and sordid history of both violence and racism was on full display this day. I've been representing families for over 2 decades now, and I have to say this case is so devastatingly sad for so many reasons. But one of them is Elijah did exactly what every Black parent tells their kids to do. Be polite to the officers, respond when they talk to you. Elijah did everything right. But what this reveals is that the racism and brutality of American law enforcement runs so deep.
McLean family lawyer Mara Newman. When we contacted the City of Aurora for comment, they told us that several directives on the use of force by police have now been changed. That includes banning chokeholds, requiring officers to intervene if others are using excessive force, and ensuring officers respond to calls about suspicious people by observing them first. The City of Aurora told us what happened has been a catalyst for change. They said they've launched an investigation which they say is independent and will include national experts on civil rights. It will not bring criminal charges. Federal officials are also reviewing the case. The police department say they're not issuing additional statements while the latest investigations are ongoing. We did also approach the Department of Justice and the Colorado Governor's Office for comment with no response. But let's remember the person who this is all about. I spoke to Elijah's mother, Shanine McLean, about her son.
He was young in history. He became a vegetarian. He loved animals. He loved nature. He would be the one to carry out the spiders and catch the flies and release them out of the car because he said all life matters. Everybody wants to live. That's what he said. Everything wants to live. And it wasn't about him being a Black person. It wasn't about him being a Black young man. It's about him being human. And he wanted to treat things with the kindness that he wanted to receive. He wanted to go through this to massage people. He wanted to travel around the world with his life. And then once he was happy with that, he was going to go to school to be an artist because he was working on his art. I have his sketchbook in storage. You know, he was embarking on who he wanted to be.
What do you want our listeners to know about that?
That the police preyed upon him. They did not follow protocol at all. In their statements to clear themselves, they stated themselves that the video shows how they killed Elijah. The video shows they didn't stop and ask him questions. They didn't observe him to see if he was a threat. Anybody walking down the street shows that they came from a store. He didn't have anything else in his hands except a bag. So if they hadn't just watched him, which is definitely first thing to do as a police officer, they would have known that he wasn't a threat. They could have followed him a few more blocks to where he lived, had they been doing their job properly. But instead, they just rushed him. They treated Elijah like they were gang members, just jumping on somebody and doing what they want to do. The police targeted Elijah. He was an easy prey to them because he was an innocent person, because he wasn't a violent individual. He said on the video, "I don't fight."
It's a very difficult watch. I will tell our listeners who haven't seen any of this yet, some of the body camera footage of that arrest didn't come out for months. I should also say the autopsy initially listed Elijah's cause of death as undetermined, and the officers involved were subsequently cleared of wrongdoing. At that time, when this happened, was it difficult to get attention to what had happened to your son Elijah?
Something, somewhere, somebody in the higher up, somebody was told to not keep publishing this stuff. We use the same platform. We use Twitter, we use Instagram, we use Facebook, but somehow, some way, Elijah's story did not take off until George Floyd got killed. George Floyd shined light on all the other cases of police brutality, of racism, of inhumane humans.
I can't imagine how painful it must have been for you. Did you think that might bring prominence or attention to Elijah?
No, because it's not about Black Lives Matter. Elijah was more than a young black man. He was a person before that. That has nothing to do with the spirit within him, the covering that he was. I do not like people saying that Black Lives Matter is the one that's promoting his story, because that's a lie. God Most High is the one, Father God is the one that's shining light on Elijah's story for the world to see. They're doing their part. But they cannot claim credit for something that the divine is doing.
So your spirituality is very important to you. What difference does it make to you now to see the case being given attention and prominence?
I want the world to know all of the killers' names. I want the world to know the ones that stood by and watched and didn't de-escalate. I want the world to know their names too. If the state of Colorado allows these killers to get away with it, and they do not give them life in prison because they took a life, they deserve life in prison. If the state of Colorado cannot charge you and all those that watched, then I'm waiting on God Most High to let karma take care of it. His life did not matter to the police department. To this day, it still doesn't, because the police officers have their job. Still, I don't care who's the chief of police. Whoever is employing them has a problem with me.